The night Chioma Nwoye landed in Port Harcourt, the air felt heavier than she remembered. Not because of the humidity, not because of the noise wrapping around the airport like restless spirits. It was a strange excitement in her chest. Her fingers trembled as she switched on her phone and saw 10 missed calls from her husband, Emeka. He had no idea she was back. For 3 years, Chioma had lived in Germany, working double shifts as a nurse, saving every euro. She had told him she needed 1 more year. She lied. She wanted to surprise him. She imagined him opening the door, lifting her, crying, "You finally came home." But what she would find would destroy everything. The driver kept glancing at her. "Madam, you sure say you no want make I call Oga?" She smiled. "No, I want to surprise him." She watched Port Harcourt pass by. Street lights, kiosks, roasted corn smoke. She touched the bracelet Emeka gave her. "Go and build our future," he had said. "I will hold things down." She believed him. The house stood tall, but something was wrong. New lights, different curtains, pink flowers instead of white lilies. The security guard didn't recognize her. "I live here," she said. Her heart began to race. Her key didn't work. She knocked. Footsteps came. The door opened, and there stood Aisha, her best friend, wearing her clothes, standing in her house. "What are you doing in my house?" she whispered. Everything had changed. The moment Chioma stepped fully into the living room, she felt it, that invisible shift, like walking into a place that looked familiar but no longer belonged to her. The gray couches she had carefully chosen were gone, and their place set a cream-colored set she had never seen before. The center table had been replaced too, now decorated with scented candles and magazines that weren't hers. Even the air felt different. Then her eyes landed on it. 2 wine glasses, one half full, the other empty, with a faint red lipstick stain on the rim. Her fingers slowly loosened from her suitcase. It dropped. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Behind her, Aisha shifted nervously. "Chioma, please." But Chioma didn't respond. She was already moving. Slow steps. Heavy. Like each one carried the weight of 3 years. The staircase felt longer than she remembered. Each step creaked softly under her feet, as if the house itself was warning her not to go further. But she kept going. At the top of the stairs, she paused. The master bedroom door was slightly open, just a little, enough to see the edge of the bed, enough to feel something inside her chest tighten. Her hand reached for the door. For a brief second, she hesitated, as if a part of her still hoped she was wrong. Then she pushed it open. Slowly. The room greeted her like a stranger. The walls were no longer white. They were painted beige. The bedspread? Not hers. The curtains? Not hers. Everything? Not hers. Her breathing became uneven. Then she saw it. On the dresser. Framed photographs. She moved closer. 1 step. Then another. Her hand trembled as she picked one up. It was Emeka, smiling, standing close to Aisha. Too close. Her eyes scanned the photo. A beach. Bright sunlight. Their bodies leaned toward each other naturally, comfortably, intimately, like people who belonged together. Her grip tightened. Another frame. Another picture. This time, Aisha was laughing. Emeka's arm around her shoulders. Casual. Familiar. Intimate. Chioma's chest rose sharply. Her mind refused to process it. "No." The words slipped out before she could stop it. Behind her, Aisha's voice broke. "Chioma, I can explain." Chioma slowly turned. Her eyes were no longer soft. They were searching, demanding. "How long?" Silence. Aisha swallowed hard. "Chioma, please." "How long?" she repeated. This time her voice was quieter,
heavier, more dangerous. Aisha's lips trembled. Her fingers twisted together nervously. It wasn't like this from the beginning. Chioma didn't blink. That is not what I asked. The silence stretched, thick, uncomfortable. Then finally, 2 years, Aisha whispered. The words landed like a physical blow. Chioma blinked slowly, as if her body needed time to catch up with the truth. 2 years? She repeated faintly. So, just 1 year after she left, everything changed. She let out a small, hollow laugh, not from humor, but from disbelief. So, while I was working double shifts, sending money, planning a future, her voice cracked slightly. You moved into my house? Aisha shook her head quickly. No, it wasn't like that. Chioma raised her hand. Not aggressively, but enough to stop her. Then explain it. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. He said the house was too big for him alone. She rushed. He said the area wasn't safe, that he needed someone he could trust. Chioma nodded slowly. I see. Her tone was calm. Too calm. So you became... what? Security? Aisha flinched. It just happened gradually. Chioma's eyes sharpened. Gradually? She stepped closer. Gradually, like sharing a bed? Aisha broke down. It wasn't planned. Chioma stared at her, then shook her slightly. Nothing about this is accidental. Her gaze drifted back to the photographs. Her husband, her best friend, sharing moments she was never part of, creating memories in the space she built. Her chest tightened again. But this time, something else joined the pain. Clarity. Cold. Sharp. Dangerous clarity. Behind her, Aisha's sobbing filled the room. But Chioma no longer moved to comfort her. Because, in that moment, she finally understood something. This wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Repeated. Over time.
The silence in the room was heavy. Not empty, but full. Full of everything that had not yet been said. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Then, headlights flashed through the curtains. Both women froze. Chioma didn't need to look. She knew. Emeka was back. Aisha's breathing became uneven. He's here, she whispered. Chioma didn't respond. She placed the photo frame back on the dresser slowly, carefully, like she was handling something fragile. But her hands were no longer shaking. They were steady. Too steady. Downstairs, the front door opened. The faint sound of it echoed through the house. Then footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Each step on the staircase sounded louder than the last. Aisha wiped her face quickly, panic written all over her. Chioma, Aziz, let me explain before he... No, Chioma said calmly. One word. Soft, but final. Stay. Aisha froze. The bedroom door creaked open, and there he stood, Emeka. For a brief second, just a second, something flashed across his face. Shock. Then guilt. Then it disappeared, replaced by something colder, controlled, calculated. Emeka, he said. Her name sounded strange in his mouth, distant, like it no longer belonged to him. Emeka, she replied. Their eyes locked. Aisha shifted awkwardly behind them. I'll go downstairs, she said quickly. No, Chioma repeated. This time her voice carried weight. Stay. Aisha hesitated, then slowly nodded. The three of them stood there, a triangle, tight, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Chioma studied her husband, really studied him. He looked fine, more than fine. His beard was neatly trimmed, his clothes were clean and well-fitted. On his wrist was a watch she had never seen before. Expensive. He did not look like a man who had been struggling. He looked like a man who had been living well, very well. You changed the locks, Chioma said. Her tone was calm, flat. "Yes," he replied. No hesitation. "Why?" A pause. Not long, but noticeable. "Because things changed." Chioma tilted her head slightly. "Explain." Emeka exhaled slowly, like he was preparing for something difficult. "Chioma, we don't have to do this like this." She almost smiled. "I'm not doing anything," she said quietly. "I'm listening." His jaw tightened. He glanced briefly at Aisha, then back at Chioma. "You left," he said. The simplicity of it hung in the air. Chioma blinked once. "I left to work. You left me alone for 3 years. I left to build this house. You abandoned the marriage." That word, abandoned, it landed heavily. Chioma took a slow breath. "Did I stop calling you?" No answer. "Did I stop sending money?" Silence. "Did I stop praying for you?" Still nothing. Instead, he said, "You changed." Chioma frowned slightly. "How?" He continued, "You became distant. Everything was about work, shifts, overtime. You were always tired." A soft, almost disbelieving laugh escaped her. "I was tired." She took a step closer. "I was working double shifts in a foreign country to support us." He didn't respond. Instead, he said something else, something that shifted everything. "Marriage is not built on money alone." Chioma nodded slowly. "You're right." A pause. Then, "Marriage is also not built on sleeping with your wife's best friend." Aisha flinched behind them. Emeka's eyes darkened instantly. "Watch your words," he snapped. Chioma stared at him. For a moment, just a moment, she almost admired the audacity. "Watch my words?" she repeated softly. "You brought another woman into my house, into my bed, and you're asking me to watch my words?" His jaw tightened. "You think this is just about betrayal," he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then what is it about?" A pause, longer this time. Then, "I didn't plan for this." Chioma didn't move. "I didn't plan to fall in love with her." The words hung in the air, heavy, final. Behind him, Aisha let out a soft, broken sound. But Chioma went completely still. Not shocked, not screaming. Still. "Love," she repeated. Her voice was quiet, almost curious. Emeka nodded once. "Yes." The room seemed to shrink. The air grew tighter, harder to breathe. "And she loves you?" Chioma asked. Aisha wiped her tears quickly. I care about him," she said weakly. Chioma looked at her, really looked at her, then back at Emeka. A strange smile touched her lips. Not warm, not kind, just knowing. "So," she said slowly, "the two of you decided to build a new life together." Her eyes moved around the room. "In my house." Silence. Then, "with my money." No one spoke, because there was nothing left to deny. The truth was already standing in the room. The room went quiet. Not shocked, just heavy. Chioma looked at Emeka. "Since when did this become worth destroying everything?" she asked. He sighed. "You were not here. You don't understand." "I was working for us," she replied calmly. "I was alone," he said. "You had a wife," she answered. Silence. Then she asked, "And the house?" Emeka hesitated. "It's in my name." Chioma froze. "We agreed it would be ours." "You were not around. It was easier." Her voice dropped. "You forged it." "I did what was practical," he said. That was it. Everything became clear. All her sacrifices reduced to nothing. "So all the money I sent?" she asked. "Support," he replied. "For your husband." Chioma let out a dry laugh. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay." She turned, walked downstairs, and opened her suitcase. From inside, she brought out a brown envelope. She faced him again. "I didn't just come to surprise you," she said. She placed it on the table. "Proof." The envelope sat on the table. Emeka frowned. "What is this?" "Open it," Chioma said calmly. He hesitated, then tore it open. Inside were documents, bank statements, transfer records, property papers. His expression changed immediately. "What is this?" he asked, his voice lower now. Chioma folded her arms. "Every transaction I ever sent," she said. "Every payment tied to that house." Aisha stepped closer, confused. Emeka flipped through the pages faster. "You're bluffing," he said. Chioma shook her head slightly. "No." She pointed at one of the documents. "I registered an international asset protection agreement before I left." Silence. "If you try to deny my ownership," she continued, "it becomes a financial fraud case." Aisha gasped softly. Emeka's confidence cracked. "You can't apply that here," he said quickly. "I don't need to," Chioma replied. She stepped closer. "The records are enough." The room fell silent again. But this time, the power had shifted. Completely. The silence in the room was thick. Emeka still held the documents. Aisha stood frozen. Then Chioma spoke again. "There's something else." Both of them looked at her. "What now?" Emeka asked, uneasy. Chioma picked up her phone. "For the past 8 months," she said, "I've been receiving messages." She placed the phone on the table. Photos, videos, evidence. Emeka at a restaurant with Aisha, late-night entries into the house, bank alerts, transfers into Aisha's account. Aisha covered her mouth. Emeka stepped back. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. Chioma looked at them both. "From someone who wanted me to know the truth." Silence. "Who?" Aisha whispered. Chioma's eyes settled on her. "Your ex-fiancé." The words hit hard. Aisha staggered slightly. "My what?" "You were engaged," Chioma said calmly. "You left him without explanation." Tears filled Aisha's eyes. "He followed you, found out everything, then contacted me." Emeka looked stunned. "You were engaged, Aisha?" he asked. She couldn't answer. Everything began to fall apart, completely. The house felt different the next morning. Quiet. Empty. Aisha was gone. She left before sunrise, without a word. Emeka stood in the living room, looking lost. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Chioma came downstairs, calm, strong. "Where is she?" she asked. "She left," he replied quietly. Chioma nodded. No reaction, no emotion, just acceptance. "I made mistakes," Emeka said. She looked at him. "Yes," she replied. "I thought you were leaving me," he continued. "I felt insecure." "And instead of fixing it," she said softly, "you replaced me." He lowered his head. Silence. Then he asked the question he should have asked long ago. "Is there any chance?" Chioma raised her hand slightly, stopping him. "Don't ask for what you didn't protect." The words hit deeper than anger. She continued, "I didn't come back to fight for a broken marriage." A pause. "I came back to end it properly." Weeks later, the divorce was finalized. The house was sold. Assets were shared. Emeka moved on, alone. Aisha disappeared from their lives completely. And Chioma? She stayed. She started again, this time for herself. She built a healthcare consultancy, slow at first, then it grew, and with it, she grew. Stronger, wiser, unshaken. She never replied to the messages from the man who exposed everything, not because she didn't care, but because she no longer needed saving. One evening, standing outside her office, watching the sunset, she smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was clear, and she finally understood. Distance doesn't destroy love. Dishonesty does. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee loyalty. Character does. And sometimes, the most painful homecoming is the beginning of your freedom.